So you may have an old PC case that has some sentimental value for you. It's been beat up, scratched, dented, and all sorts of stuff, including the acrylic side panel, which probably has a lot of scratches on it by now. So it might not be valuable to anyone else, but it is certainly valuable for you. And today I'm going to try and attempt to restore this PC case. For better or for worse, some methods worked really well, better than I expected, and some not so much. But I probably could have done better with a bit of extra time. Now, the reason I want to save this case is because NAS cases are actually quite expensive, and this has a lot of hard drive capacity that I can squeeze in here. First thing you want to do is start stripping this completely down. I decided to take absolutely everything out: the front panel, the CD drive, both side panels, and also taking out all the fans, all the PCI brackets, literally everything, so that you can get into every nook and cranny of that case. Make sure you check for grommets and things like that, because if you're like me, I like to reuse my rubber. If you're like me, that is. Anyway, that kind of came out wrong. Next thing you want to do is take it out into your garden and wash it down with a hose. If you have a pressure washer, that'll be a great option to be able to really clean out all the nooks and crannies. If you're like me and I'm using, it looks like an old man spitting water onto my PC case. That's how weak my hose is. But anyway, um, as long as you've got some water and it's under pressure, just wash everything out, turn it around, and also do all the other parts. You can also use the front panel, even though you've got the connectors and all the buttons on the top. Still hose the whole thing down. It gives it a nice clean look, and don't forget to actually do the wires as well. And here I've done the side panels, I've done the dust filter on the bottom of the PSU. So just do every part methodically. Once you're done, what I like to do is I like to use my air compressor to blow off all the parts, and that just makes sure there is no liquid whatsoever left on each of the components. There's no risk of lint or anything like that if you're using like a rag or some tissue and it doesn't get stuck. It's super easy to clean that out. If you don't have an air compressor, you can just use canned air, although that can get quite expensive when you're trying to dry off a massive case. The other option is, of course, just using a rag. Just get a microfiber cloth or a rag or something just to dry out the whole case. But of course, you're going to have to wait longer to make sure that all the water residue has evaporated or has dispersed over time. Now the next job is to bang out the dents on your side panels. You can see here, if you catch it in the right light, and you do need good light to be able to see where all the dents are, try and locate it. And what you need is a hard metal surface that you need to put your side panel on or material on. That way it acts as a flat surface that you can kind of knock out all these dents. And this actually worked really, really well, a lot better than I expected. You don't need to hammer it with a lot of force. Just many light taps would get the dent out. Then just inspect your work. Just check if it's still there or not. And if it's still there, just turn it over and just tap it some more. Don't worry about creating scratches or scuffs, because we're going to be painting this over anyway. Now under light you can see how badly scuffed these side panels are. There are so many scratches on here. There were dents all over the side panels, and I just banged them all out with a hammer. It probably took me about 15 minutes to get all the dents out. Once you've done that, then just lay it on a surface, and I'd use my orbital sander and you just go to town. I used a pretty aggressive sanding disc on there and it sanded it down really well. By the end, all the scratches are out and it was super smooth. After you've done that, then you want to go a little less in terms of the grain of the sandpaper, and maybe go into like 100 grit sandpaper to give it a bit more of a smoother finish, and then clean it off and you should be good to paint. Just beware, don't go too fine a grain, because end of the day the paint still needs a little bit of a rough surface to stick onto. Now it's time for a bit of a clean. So I just used some soapy water in a bottle and just wiped it down with a microfiber cloth, just making sure there's isn't going to be any contaminants or lint on the surface. And after you've done that, you can maybe use some alcohol to get it even cleaner. After that, you want to spray some primer onto the side panels just to help the paint stick a little more. And then you want to then just spray whatever color you want. Just make sure you use some sweeping motions and try and keep the paint as even as you can. Spray cans aren't that great in terms of giving pressure out of the end of the nozzle and giving an even spray pattern, but you can still get fairly good results. And by the time it dries, it should look pretty even by the time you're done. Just make sure you use the side to side motion to paint the panels. Next, I decided to sort out the front panel, and I took out every single bracket that was in there. I resprayed the gauze that was on the front. I washed the sponges. I didn't throw them away. You could replace them. I decided to reuse mine just by cleaning them, and they were fine. And once you've repainted them, washed your sponges, then you can reassemble them onto the bracket. And it's simply just a reverse of what you did when you took it apart. Just be careful when you're pressing down that you don't scuff or scratch the front panel while you're putting it back together. Now it's just simply inserting the blanking plates back in. It's always worth to have a spares box just so that you can have spare blanking plates ready to go whenever you need it. And luckily I had some brushed aluminium ones and they kind of went with the theme of the PC case pretty well, although not completely original. So this is a tricky bit, is restoring the acrylic side panel. I wanted to get all the scratches out, and you could get a replacement, but I decided not to go down that route. Unfortunately, I didn't capture this, but what you want to do is use wet and dry paper, moving from 400 all the way to 2000 grit, and of course spraying the panel with water before you sand it down. And you'll get that kind of cloudy finish at the end. If you want to get rid of that, you use cutting compound. Again, spray it with water and rub the compound on until you get a clear screen. Now, it wasn't completely clear when I put it back into its place in the side panel, but it's not too bad, and at the end of the video you will see what it looked like when I was pretty much done. Let me know if you've got any opinions on how this could have been done better. Now it's just a simple case of doing the reverse of when you took it apart and just putting all the bits and pieces back in place. Now, although I tried to reuse every part that I took out of the case, I couldn't reuse the fans. So I installed some new fans, some fairly basic cheap ones, and hoped that the front panel will go back on, which luckily it did. Now let's do a bit of a comparison with a before and after, and you can see this case is looking so much better. I wouldn't say it looks brand new, but certainly definitely looks much more restored than it was. Shame about the acrylic side panel, but let me know in the comments if you know any other method that might be better. I heard a heat gun might work quite well, and this is the end result. I'd forgotten to do the top, so I'm going to take this apart and do it again, but I think it's well worth doing in terms of rescuing an old case that could still have a new lease of life moving forward. So if you like the video, please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.